welcome to Conversations in Public Relations. I'm Mary Fletcher Jones. Today I'm very honored to have guest Mitty Aponte from the Sanchez-Ricardo Agency. She's going to talk to us about multicultural communications. Mitty, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Mitty, tell me the story behind the name of your agency.
The Sanchez-Ricardo Agency was actually named after my grandmother and my mother. My grandmother's maiden name is Manuela Nenita Sanchez. She was born in Cuba in the 1920s. And my mom, her name is Miriam Ricardo. She was also born in Cuba. And they both represent components of who I am. My grandmother is very progressive. She's very politically involved. And my mother is very dedicated to work. She has an incredibly strong work ethic. And it's that fight, grit, and determination that I infuse into everything that I do. So it's really an honor to them rather than putting my name on the door. I wanted to, kind of have them have this honor.
That's a beautiful story.
Thank you
for sharing that.
Thank you.
So now your agency does something very unique that's different from many of the agencies here in DC. Tell me what your niche specialization is.
I do multicultural communications. And this really stemmed from my involvement at the Crisis Communications Agency, where I saw and was part of a team where we really implemented very high-level strategic thinking to reach a specific or to address a specific issue. Mm-hmm. So, working with multinational corporations who have very large budgets, it's easy to work in that kind of environment and to implement the strategies that you are thinking. But I wanted to take that high-level strategic thinking and provide that to Hispanic organizations who don't have the budget or the resources or the personnel to be able to carry on a plan of that nature. And so what I really do is coalition building, networking, media visibility, and then social networking with social media. And so I come into a meeting with Hispanic organizations or a business that wants to reach Hispanic audiences and really present them with an A to Z on how to reach a specific demographic.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting to me. If you want to reach the Hispanic demographic, how is that approach different from, say, just reaching the general population?
Hispanics are so layered. It's such a layered community. Mm-hmm. You have Spanish-dominant Hispanics, right? Mm-hmm. Folks my parents' age who maybe don't have a good grasp of the English language and who watch and enjoy and read Spanish media. Mm-hmm. Then you have an entire generation like myself of English-dominant Hispanics who never turn on Univision or Telemundo and have never opened a Spanish language newspaper.
Interesting.
So you have different layers. You have the Spanish dominant, you have the English dominant, you have bicultural individuals who function in both cultures. The Hispanic heavy culture, music, language, culture, etc. And then you have who can actually live and thrive also in American traditional culture as well. So it's a very interesting dynamic and one that really requires tailored thought in how to approach this specific audience, how to segment it, and then how to frame messages around it that are really going to be relatable to them.
I see. Well, can you give me an example so I can kind of understand that better?
Ace Hardware Store retained a Hispanic marketing firm in New York. And I read through the Hispanic, the plan, the communications and advertising plan. It was very interesting. So in Hispanic culture, if you go back to Latin America or the Caribbean, there's this thing about, and I'll say it in Spanish, la ferreteria. Mm-hmm. And la ferreteria means your corner hardware store. So if your mom or dad need to go get a nail or a hammer, they just say, I'm going to go to la ferreteria around the corner. And they have a relationship with the business owner, and it's kind of like your neighborhood grocery store.
Sure.
So Ace Hardware has captured this idea.
Right.
And they are now doing an advertising campaign tailored to Hispanics around the idea of Ace Hardware Store being your ferreteria.
Oh, right.
So it's that personal touch, it's that knowing that nuance where, you know, you have a Hispanic audience who are immediately going to relate to that concept. And now they're thinking, yeah, you know, Ace Hardware Store, I kind of own that too. It's my little store.
I see. Well, that works really well for their brand, doesn't it? But, you know, what I'm seeing is that more and more brands are reaching out to Hispanic populations. So tell me, why is that true today? I can guess why, but I'd like to hear you say, why is it so important now for organizations and corporations to be able to communicate well with Hispanic audiences of all layers, as you know?
Well, you know that obviously, you know, with the 2010 census, it'll prove, or it'll turn out that Hispanic population has grown increasingly over the last couple of decades.
Yes. And
I think that Hispanic minority is now becoming the majority, or is on that route. And so you have a growing demographic, right?
Yes.
You have a growing population. You have a growing population who are going to college, becoming educated, working in the professional sector, in a private sector, who are also influential in government. So you have an audience that also has monetary buying power.
Right.
So this is good for corporations to be able to communicate with them and get them to buy into their products. And so the key is going to be, how do you build that relationship with your Hispanic audience? How do you build the credibility and the long-lasting relationship that is really going to make them loyal to your brand?
So, Mitty, if people would like to learn more about Sanchez Ricardo Agency, where should they look for you online?
I'm online at www.sanchezricardo.com. And I'm also on Facebook. So you can type in Sanchez Ricardo Agency and my fan page will come up. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, Mitty Aponte.
Great. Thank you so much for visiting with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I learned so much.
Great.
Take care.